Welcome to another Rookie Reset Sunday. If this is your first time joining, my name is Andrea Fitzgerald, and what I do is build the self-efficacy and confidence of new educators and students. So you may be wondering, what the heck is a Rookie Reset Sunday? Well, guys, it would be Sunday night just like this, except I would be stressed the hell out because I could not manage my classroom. And quite frankly, I could not figure out this whole teaching thing. I was stressed out my first year. So what we do here on Rookie Reset Sunday is hopefully help you reset. And we talk to people who are smashing it in the educational space because regardless, at one point, they were a new teacher too. So I'm so excited for our guest today. Is it Dr. Maggie Slye? I didn't feel inclined to say that. I just named and claimed that for everything. But we have Maggie Slye from Leading Educators. Yes. She is the Managing Director of Networks at Leading Educators. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. So Maggie, welcome. I'm glad to have you. And just for those that may not know you, could you just give us a brief introduction on who the heck is Maggie Slye?
Sure. Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Maggie Slye. I'm a 20-year plus educator. I was a literacy coach and teacher for 10 years. I'm an assistant principal for 3 years. I was in the central office as a director for a couple of years. And now for the past 5 years, I've worked with Leading Educators, which is a national nonprofit, helping school system leaders create and implement their vision for teaching and learning.
Yes. And shout out to Leading Educators. I want to say I was doing some work with SAP a few years ago, and they gave you guys like the biggest shout out in DC. Yes. Or something like your model around, was it training teacher leaders or something like that? But they said that was like the most effective. So shout out to y'all doing that work there. That's awesome. I just think that's so cool.
Thank you. Yes, that was our work with DC Public Schools, and the program was called LEAP. And it was, I believe, the first systemic professional learning approach that was really focused on helping teachers, new teachers, experienced teachers, teachers that taught students with IEPs, teachers who were teaching students learning English, all of those teachers together, learning about how to better leverage their curriculum to meet the needs of all their students.
Yes, I love that. And they said the data was amazing. So
it was.
Yes. The people love the numbers, so I'm all about it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I imagine you have not been managing director forever. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about like what kind of inspired you and what has kind of been your pathway into education. It's so amazing to me to just hear people's story. I find it so fantastic. So just tell a little bit about your pathway into education.
Sure. I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, which is just a couple miles outside of Washington, D.C. And I went to the high school that's featured in the movie Remember the Titans. I'm sure you know that. Yes.
Yes, I love that movie.
Yes, a wonderful movie. And so you know from watching that movie that Alexandria, Virginia is a very racially diverse community. And when I was growing up, I went to all Title I schools where the majority of students were Black and brown, and yet in the gifted and talented classes in which I was enrolled, there weren't any Black or brown students. Those kids were in the homeroom class, but then I and a number of my white classmates went to gifted and talented or TAG classes. And so I knew from an early age that something was not right in our system. Right. You would walk into the school and you'd see this gigantic world map, with flags pinned in each place. And it was like, diversity is our strength. Diversity is our strength. And yet when you go into the classrooms where kids are, doing the science experiments with like real fish and seeds and learning how to do Shakespeare plays, right? All those kids were the minority of the school population. Those were all the white kids. And so it was very clear that based on race, you would have access to certain opportunities. And I didn't know what that was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly didn't understand that it was a system.
Mm.
But I knew it wasn't okay. And so I went through most of my K-12 career seeing this and noticing it and really just not knowing what my place was as a white teenager in sort of contributing to
Mm-hmm.
helping to understand it and to
Right,
address it.
right. Mm.
So my senior year of high school, I had an amazing teacher. His name was Jack S. Formas.
Mm-hmm.
And he said at one point, how can you teach um, in a group of elite kids about government if all they're surrounded by is other elite kids? He said, it just doesn't
Mm.
make any sense. If we
Mm.
need to teach kids about government, then kids need to actually be in a democracy, right? Like there need to be
Mm.
kids from all over the city,
Right.
in this room. And
Mm-hmm.
so he basically created the first AP course that any student could enroll into, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had been tracked for AP classes when in third grade, I took a test on a random Saturday and somebody deemed me gifted. So then
Mm-hmm.
I just got to be in these honors classes for the rest of my K-12 experience.
Mm-hmm.
What this teacher was saying was, it doesn't matter that you took that test or that
Mm-hmm.
you didn't take that test, and certainly not what happened when you were 8.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have access to an AP government class? Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Come
Mm.
on in.
Wait a minute. So let me pause you there because this is so let me be clear. So from a test you had in third grade, that kind of like set
Mhm.
like kind of set the course of what classes you take. But
Mhm.
this teacher is kind of like, wait a minute, like everyone, if they want to take the AP class, they should have access, and it shouldn't be based on a third grade, on one moment in time. That's what I often think about
Yep.
assessments. It's like one moment in time, but it's also like hearing this story. Like, remember the Titans? Y'all know, yeah, that movie is like I love that movie. But like just hearing like even your story about like how different the experience is, it's amazing to me that a lot of that has not changed. That's just
You're right.
amazing, amazing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting. Carry on.
No, not
Carry
at
on.
all. Right. And yeah, and 20 years later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, so what I learned from this teacher
Mm-hmm.
was, well, you know, I think prior to my experience with him, I thought that my mom had always said, oh, you're going to go to college, you're going to be a lawyer. And so I just
Mm-hmm.
figured I would become a public defender, that I
Mm-hmm.
would contribute to society, yeah, as a public defender, and had never aspired to be a teacher. And then
Right.
I met this amazing teacher, and what I learned from him and his activism in the classroom and in our school
Mm-hmm.
was that educators have the opportunity to contribute to making the world a more just, a fairer place.
Mm-hmm.
And before that year with him, that just hadn't clicked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, like
Mm-hmm.
teachers are powerful.
Yes. Yes.
Teachers can
Agreed.
help right wrongs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that set me on my path. I mean, I still wasn't sure that I necessarily wanted to be a career teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to the University of Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and saw a flyer for Teach for America.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really fed into this idea that I had that,
Mm-hmm.
teachers could be part of something bigger than themselves,
Mm.
could really
So
fight
true.
for a more just world. And so I applied to Teach for America, and I joined TFA, and
Mm-hmm.
I spent a couple years in Compton, California,
Mm-hmm.
as a second grade teacher, and
Come
really thought,
through
yep,
Compton. Yes, I did not know that.
yeah,
That is
yep,
so dope. Compton.
yeah. It
Okay.
it it was it was a remarkable experience. I loved my students. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I really think I thought I was going to go into Teach for America, sort of try to understand
Mm-hmm.
um, race and poverty, and try to
Mm-hmm.
learn. But I never ever anticipated that I would fall in love with 7-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. So I then spent the next 10 years in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and have really always been school based. I've always worked for traditional public school systems until the last 5 years that I've been working at LE. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say, yeah, the thing that really got me into education was just this understanding that teachers can be powerful, and teachers can help create a more just
Mm-hmm.
world and experience for kids.
So would you say, like, what I'm hearing you say is, well, two things. So would you say that like social justice has kind of been like your driver for like internet education, or like would you say that would be true? Like social justice?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I wouldn't have had the language for it back then,
Mhm.
but yes,
Right.
right? Like something is really messed up. And I don't know what that is, right? But I
Right,
know
right.
that since I was 8 years old, I have had access and opportunity, and I need to
Mm,
use that for
mhm.
something that is not just myself.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Because I was just like, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. This is
Right.
I mean, I think that's Shakespeare.
Yep.
Yes, I mean, yeah, Miss Lovell, my English teacher might be excited at that. But yeah, like something is off, and I think just recently I've started really understanding like how systemically it's like how it's set up. But I mean, it sounds like from an early age, like you started seeing glimpses of like, this is not necessarily right. But the second thing I kind of hear from what you're saying is like teachers, we got some real deal impact.
Mhm.
Serious. And it's so amazing. Like every time I talk to someone every week, the journey into teaching, like I didn't even know that I was going to be a teacher, and boom, you know what I'm saying? It's so amazing to me, just like the impact that we have, and just like how we can literally like change the whole trajectory of someone's life, and it's really like a motivator, for why I do what I do. So Mags, so let's talk about your experience as a new teacher. You know what I mean? So
Oh Lord.
yes, I love hearing like funny new teacher stories. But before we get into that, because I do want to hear that. But so what do you think? Like all the things you've done in education, what would you say is the most essential piece of information that a new teacher needs to know? Like what would you say, especially in this time that we're in? Or what would you say that is absolutely essential?
I would say particularly for new teachers, because the number one thing that people think about when they're thinking about new teachers is classroom management, right? Like you got to come in, you've got to have your routines and procedures, you got to have your
Right.
rules, you got to have your rewards and
Mm-hmm.
consequences, right? Like you've got to have this entire, you have to envision how you think the world should be, and then you need to figure out how to operationalize that in your classroom for
Right.
20 to 30 kids, right?
Right.
That's a huge undertaking when you think about it, right? You're
Humongous.
creating, right, like your vision of what you believe a just world looks like
Right.
with your 6-year-olds or whoever. um
Okay.
and so, but I feel like by using the phrase classroom management, it is too reductive, right? Like
Mm.
what it really is about building a space where children feel valued and seen and
Come
heard
on. Come
and
on.
capable of engaging with each other, and the affirmation that comes with that. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think the thing that I wish that I had been, and I probably was told, but I think it just sort of went in one ear and out the other because I was just so focused on like the classroom management. It's
Yes.
just that like it's about relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kids want to do well. When a kid is not showing up the way that you know that they know how, they don't want to be like that. They don't want to have that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think as a young teacher, there were so many times when my kids were not doing what I wanted them to do that I almost took it personally. Right? Right? It's just so
I've been that teacher.
right? It just, and I'm like, she's 7. This has nothing to do with you. What this child needs from you is
Right.
is a clear recommitment to them as a human being,
Right.
right? And when
Mm-hmm.
they push you away, you got to figure out a way to get closer. So
Right.
to me, I would say the most essential piece of information for a new teacher is that it is about relationships and love.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I would agree with that. I think that was the piece that they didn't tell me that. They didn't. No one told me that.
Hmm.
I think that, and because I didn't know that, that's why I was stressed out my first year. I was trying to do all the tactical pieces, like, oh, I'm gonna teach this content, and the kids were like, Miss Fisher, I don't care about these little math problems. You up here, I know you don't care about me and taking it personal. That you said a whole mouthful there. We talking about taking it personal. It's like, dang. But I want to go back to one of the things you said. You said, okay, so we talking classroom management, but you said like creating the environment. You said that reflects like a socially just world. Could you tell me a little bit more about like that piece right there in particular?
Yeah, I mean, after my first year, which was really rough, I think I did really begin to see running a classroom as an incredible privilege. And that when everything was going the way that we wanted, it was like being a conductor of an orchestra, right? Like it was not about the teacher, right? It was about, not to be melodramatic, but like it was about, the symphony we could create together. And when I think about that metaphor of an orchestra, and I think about, so then what is my job as the conductor? My job is to create the conditions within which that orchestra can create something beautiful. And I think about the same with our classroom. Like if I'm coming into a classroom because I believe that there is something outside my classroom walls that is unfair, that it is marginalizing children, marginalizing families, denying access, denying opportunity. And then I create an environment where I replicate that same exact ethos. That is not okay.
Come on.
And so I think as a teacher, you have to sit back and be like, okay, why am I a teacher? What do I believe about the world? What do I believe about children? What do I believe about an environment, a space? And then I start with that vision of how I think children should treat each other, how children should be treated by adults. And then I have to create all the things that will allow us to reach that vision. That is not routines and procedures, right? That's not starting with, and that's important, right? Like Harry Wong's, the first day of schools, like that is biblical, right? I mean, like that, how do you get kids into the classroom? How do they sharpen their pencils?
Right.
Gosh, you've got to have that stuff. But that's not the starting place.
No.
Starting is place, how do you want children to feel and experience this space?
Yes. Come
on.
You
got to go back from that.
Yes. I absolutely love that. I love that. Because I often think that in education, I think that's the piece we miss, but just like that, it's the starting point. It is the starting point for even access to the procedures, to the content. It's like, do I feel safe with you, boo? Like, do I feel safe? And I love that analogy of, oh, this is what we're going to create together. I think that is so powerful. Because I think it's like those soft skills are so essential. When we start talking about creating that classroom environment, and that's why I always say that self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools in the universe, because you gotta start with you, and then like, how do I create that environment? It's so powerful. Like,
that's a great point, Andrea. Right. And like and I wasn't right my first couple of years, right? But, or at least certainly not my first year, but I think you're right about the self-awareness, like to be able to notice this kid is acting this way and I can feel myself heating up, right? Like I got to notice that. I got to be the adult and I got to do something about it, right? Instead of just reacting. And yes.
Agreed. Yes, it is a really powerful thing. Because I always say the more self-aware I became a much better teacher. Like I was just like, these kids don't care. They don't want to do they don't want to do their homework. They don't. But I was like, oh, actually, they don't have access.
Yeah.
They don't. It's not personal that they're not bringing a pencil. Miss Fisher, I don't have any lights. I don't care about your little pencil or your 5 math problem for that matter too. Right. So it's just it's like so many other components I think that often get missed, like when you are being prepped to teach. Like you got to be self-aware, and like you said, those relationships are so critical.
And what I something that I hear in what you're describing, right, about like, we don't have lights on in my house, I can't think about bringing a pencil, is just approaching students and families with curiosity.
Yes, come on.
Right? Like when children feel affirmed, I feel like that also helps you build trust with families. And if you're approaching families with a sense of curiosity of like, how as a teacher can my classroom be a support to your family rather than like a pressure on your family. I think that builds that trust, that then when you do say, please make sure your kid is reading for 20 minutes every night, right? Like now it's a two-way street.
Yep.
I'm inviting you into my classroom. Into our classroom. I'm inviting you to tell me about, what's worked well in the past, what hasn't. And I think the more that we are invitational and curious about our families, the more that they then sort of support their kids learning at home as well.
Yes.
It can't just be us telling people what to do.
Exactly. Who responds to that?
Right. Certainly not grown-ups.
Yes, I know I don't. Listen, the defensive monster is real when you start telling me what to do. Like, I'm like, oh, no. Right. So I definitely understand that. And really just like curiosity. That piece there that you just named too. That was one of the biggest things in terms of like listening that I learned in relationship school. It's like it start with curiosity, versus like I'm telling you this. So I really appreciate that. And especially you just naming right there about like being affirmed. I'm sure you've probably read this book, but culturally relevant, was it culturally responsive teaching in the brain? But she really highlights that's one of the ways for students to feel safe with you and trust you. Because kids are so aware, like they feel it when we are not being authentic, and just affirming them is one of the ways to do that. So,
and it is egregious that beginning teachers don't have access to all of the research that is in that book, right? You said earlier, people love the numbers.
Yes.
It is literally black and white.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's inexcusable that teachers come in and aren't made aware of that.
Yes, I totally agree. I think I think it would totally change education in general, because we're not teaching robots, guys. We're teaching human beings, and as complex as I am, Lord knows, I know I am complex. I don't know about you. I'm a handful. I can be a handful. So I can only imagine, as a child, like, my inner child, we all have it. So it's we're dealing with humans. So yeah.
And I think too that it's even more important when you're teaching across lines of difference.
Yes, come on, let's go.
Because the cultural dynamics within which I grew up as, a white middle class kid in a suburb right outside the city, like I have a different experience than perhaps all or most of my students. And again, going back to the evidence, I mean, we know that across lines of difference, particularly white teachers working with Black students, that white teachers do not give Black students as rigorous feedback on assignments. That, if a child has a Black teacher in K-12, they're far more likely to be invited into a gifted and talented program.
Wow, really?
Implicit bias is real and impacts, again, this idea of access and opportunity. I'll never forget I think it was my third or fourth year of teaching, and I was teaching in Boston, and I had an incredibly diverse group of students, and one of my families was Vietnamese and did not speak English. And I had this system where every Friday I would pull out like a tracker that had all of my kids' names on it, and I would make sure that I was calling each family for a positive call at least once a month. And I had a tracker because I knew I had to keep myself honest, right? I knew that there were some kids that I would be more likely to call multiple times for a positive call than other kids, whether that's based on, things that were really obvious, like behavior, or if it was just bias that perhaps I wasn't even aware of.
Right.
And so I remember I had called the Wynn's house multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get anyone to pick up the phone. Then, it was time to schedule conferences again, like just kept reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at one point thinking, okay, I know that mom and dad don't speak English. I've called, 3 or 4 times,
Right.
haven't been able to connection. I'm just going to stop. And then, like we were saying earlier, self-awareness, like heard myself sort of have this thought and was like, what? Like, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kept calling. Anyways, parent teacher conference, the oldest brother, who was 18 or 19, came up to the school. The father came up to the school.
Okay.
And we had the conference with the little girl, with her portfolio, and the dad was there, and the brother was translating the entire conference for the dad.
Mm-hmm.
And in the conclusion of the meeting, the brother came up to me and said, I just want to say thank you. There are 6 of us. I'm the oldest. She's the youngest. This is the first time my parents have ever come up to school.
Wow.
And if you hadn't kept calling and calling and calling, I don't think it would have happened. And I just want to tell you how important this was to me.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I just went back to this, like the power that teachers have.
Mm.
And the little decisions that we make every day that are based on our own comfort and not what's best for a child or a family. It was an overwhelming experience to be told that, and to think about how quickly I almost didn't keep following up.
Yep. That gave me chills. Like, seriously. I mean, it just further reiterates, like you said, the power of a teacher. Like, man, like literally this is the first time that they actually came up to the school. Like, that is like, man, that is like really, really touching. Like, that is, man, that is absolutely awesome. So, so if I'm a new teacher, because like you said, I mean, it was like that, like you said, that little small window, you almost was like, yo, I'm not calling no more.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like how important would you say, like being in contact with parents is as a new teacher? Because amongst the other things that we have to do, as a new teacher, like, clearly you show in that story, like it's imperative to get, to contact, and then weekly, shout out to you. Look at you, strategies and systems. I mean, that's awesome. But yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because I mean, that was like really strategic. I mean, every week you're reaching out. So how important do you think as a new teacher, that for me to stay in contact with my parents?
Yeah. So I would say that probably as a new teacher, it is more important than any other year of your career as a teacher, because you just know so darn little, right? And parents can be one of your biggest advocates, one of your biggest sources of information, whether it's about the child, whether it's about what's working for the child and what isn't. I mean, the parents can give you the gift of information and feedback and knowledge that you so desperately need when you're a first year teacher. And so I would say, like, one, I just think like engaging with families your first year is critically important, because they're giving you feedback and input that you really need. And frankly, you don't get that much of, right?
Yeah.
You can have, your principal, your AP, your instructional coach, your department chair, they're not going to be in your classroom every day. But your children are, and their parents, kind of are too. And so to me, I think like they're a great source of information. I would also say that I came at education, one of the first people I learned about as I was studying education was James Comer, who is at the Yale Center for Children, I believe is what it is. And he was
James Comer?
James Comer, PhD in Yale. And he created something called the School Development Program, or SDP. And I watched, like, those montages where it's like a clip, like 15 minutes on like 2020 or something like that, 100 years ago.
I remember that.
Right. And it was spotlighting this program. And his biggest piece was, if you can if you can connect with families, you can connect with children.
I love that.
And he had small things like, you know, and his was a big push around community schools, right? So like wraparound services and things like that. And you know, when you're a teacher starting out, you can't go into your school and say, we should have a community school, right? Let's, you know, like you're not gonna be able to, you know, change your school from what it is to something different in a year, right? But when you can control what is within your locus of control is perhaps the smaller ideas of that, which is how can you situate your classroom as a resource to families? Just like a community school, the school is potentially a resource to families. And so just knowing that, I feel like it really, you know, no one had to convince me that working with families was critically important, because I had seen this clip and I had just been so compelled by it. And again, the research and evidence about the impact that it has on student achievement and student wholeness and student wellness is really, it's there.
I love that. I love that. I mean, yeah, it just shows that it's like a lot of power, like getting the parents on your side. And I really like how you just named like your first year, especially. You're gonna need to have the parents on your side and like that feedback, because yeah, it's like I mean, you know, the principals and leaders and stuff, they have a lot on their plate, you know, and just that first year, I think I was reading an article that said that that first year, like the one thing that teachers need the most, new teachers need, is emotional support, because it's like, dang, this is hard. And speaking of which, I'd love to hear about your first year, because now we see Maggie Slye all polished and all good. But I'd love to hear about that first year, because it sounds like it was great. Sounds like you made no mistakes.
Oh, Lord.
And it was it was perfect. So I'd love to hear about your first year.
Awesome.
Because so people can understand, like, yeah, guys, it's a little bit challenging there.
Yeah, and you'll get through it. Oh gosh, I mean, so I'll tell a quick story, which hopefully will give you sort of the overall impression of what my first year was like. So it was like the first or second day of school, and like many beginning teachers, I had been told that you would be judged based on the quietness of your line, right? It makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. But at the time, it was, you know, the kids have to have their hands behind their back or in their pockets, mouths are closed, eyes face forward, right? It was like militaristic, right? But if you could do that, then clearly your colleagues would think you're a good teacher. So anyways, I was really sweating my line and I was walking backwards. And this is in California. So it's an outdoor school. And so I'm walking backwards, you know, and I'm doing all the, you know, behavior narration, you know, so-and-so has his eyes forward, so-and-so, I'm teaching second grade. Well, some little kindergartner who was in front of us fell down and was on the ground. But because I was walking backwards, because again, I had been told that that's what you were supposed to do, I fell over this poor 5-year-old, like, right? And I was wearing my like first or second day of school, you know, school marm dress and all of that, and just completely went backwards.
Oh no!
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So no!
That was I think it was either the first or the second day of school. And that just was pretty much what my entire first year was like, right? Was trying to do the things I had been told to do, and not, and trying real hard and just not quite getting it, right? Not quite getting to the finish line. Gosh, you know, how many times I've said I would love to go back and teach that group of students again, you know, knowing what I know now and didn't know then. Yeah, I really struggled, you know, to create the environment that I thought my kids deserved. It's so interesting what you said about emotional support. I just felt terrible about myself, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was a failure. Like I failed constantly.
Right.
You know, I would be driving up, I think it was the 710, and be thinking about, you know, if I just got into a fender bender, right, on my way to school, maybe I wouldn't have to go today. And like it was I had never felt so unsuccessful at something in my
Yes.
life at 21.
Yes.
And the pressure to be better was so intense
Right.
because you're seeing these kids every day and you're like, my ability to get myself together will have a significant impact on whether or not you learn to read, write, do math, etc. in second grade.
So true.
Right. And so it's sort of this like shame and guilt. And gosh, you know, by March, things were so much better. Right. So
Right.
I think the biggest thing is just not to give up.
Yeah. Because one of the things you said, which I think a lot of teachers feel this way, that new teachers, is like, I just felt, like you said, I just never felt so unsuccessful at something. You know, like I'm sure before that, you probably like great grades. If I work hard at it, I get results.
That's right. That's right.
But that first year of teaching, it does not feel that way. You're like, man, I am busting it. I mean, I am in there every day. I'm in the gym shooting the jump shots. But when I get in the game, I'm like, I am bricking. They are not going in. And I thought, like, and another thing you said was like the advice. You're like, okay, you cannot have this line. Like your line needs to be quiet. You know what I'm saying? And so you're measuring your success on this thing, and it's almost like, I don't know if anyone ever told you, don't smile at the kids.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Worst advice ever.
Yep.
Yep. But it's just like, yeah, it's that hard. And I think that's why it's so important that just to have different people that in education, like now, like super successful, you know what I mean? But at one point you were a first year teacher and it is challenging. It is that hard, guys. I'm in a few new teacher groups and they're like, I cry every day.
Yeah.
I am having a breakdown every day. So I really appreciate you bringing your insight there. Just about that first year, because guys, yes, it's that tough. It is that tough, and you can do it. And just like you said, don't give up. Keep going. You heard it. Don't give up, guys. Just keep going, one day at a time. And I know this year is really hard. So shout out to all of you that are doing that.
And something that really helped me was, like every break or opportunity, I would go observe a more experienced teacher. Or, I was teaching in California. So on winter break, I flew back to the East Coast and I went to my old elementary school and observed teachers there because it was just like, I'm not going to quit, right? I can't give up. And I know what I'm doing is not the right thing. And frankly, I don't even know if people coming in and giving me feedback is going to help because there's just so much wrong. But if I can continue to build like my vision of excellence, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what it's supposed to look like. Then I feel like I can like build some confidence that I can get there. But you just have to kind of know, you haven't been in school like that in so long, especially if you're teaching elementary school. I do think like you just don't really have a good vision of what it's even supposed to look like. Other than these crazy things that people tell you, like your line needs to look like that and don't smile at children.
Yeah, because that's going to work. Like that's definitely going to work. But I want to highlight something you also said earlier, which I want to shout out your emotional intelligence. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's so cool. You're like I'm feeling shame and I'm feeling guilt. I just think that's, just that self-awareness thing, it's so critical. I mean, I could name what it was. I think I was like, at that time I was not emotionally in touch, so I was just like, I just want to quit. Like, why is this so hard? But it's just like naming those emotions that you feel inside, like, because it does kind of feel like that. Why can I not figure this out? So thanks for sharing that. So do you think that has there been a moment thus far that's like changed you, that either changed you as a new teacher, or even like since you've been in education, you'd be like, this moment in particular has like shifted the way that I think, or just your thoughts. Like, I'd love to hear a little bit more there.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think it connects back to this idea of like having this vision of excellence, of like what it's supposed to look like. But I will never forget the summer after my first year of teaching. Um, our school system had been taken over by the state, right? And so that's a bad thing, right?
Yes.
However, it also means that your school system is receiving more resources from the state DOE. And so one of the things that I got to do is I was chosen as the representative to go to what was called the Governor's Reading Initiative. So I got to spend 5 days over the summer learning about the National Reading Panel, learning about like the 5 essentials of teaching kids to read, taught through my curriculum, which at that time was open court. And so to me, all of these light bulbs started going off. And so, you know, I feel like I entered the classroom with a lot of aspirations about classroom community. And I feel like that stuff comes with time. Like you just start to, you kind of learn what works and what doesn't work. But the explicit content of learning how to teach children to read absolutely changed me as a new teacher, and as an educator. And it is the thing that continues to push me to do this work, to make sure that teachers have the information that they need to teach our children, especially our most vulnerable children, how to read. And it is, when you look at the reading wars and the back and forth that this has gone over decades and decades now, and you think about the number of teachers saying, I was never taught the science of reading, I've never been taught what phonemic awareness is, and they're a first grade teacher, that's not okay. And that goes back again to like the system, right? Like
right.
this is not like an individual teacher that was like lazy in her methods class. Like this is a decision that has been made about what to teach new teachers and what not to teach them. And so, yeah, learning about how to teach kids how to read. And fortunately, when I got my master's, I was in a program that had professors that were very much devoted to teaching us about phonemic awareness and phonics and fluency. And but a lot of teachers don't have that, and so that definitely changed me as a new teacher. Because now I finally knew what I knew how to do something.
So I have a follow-up question to that. Okay. So, because you said one of the things you just said there was like, it wasn't that like, oh, this teacher's just like, oh, I don't want to teach. Like I don't want, like, I'm just being lazy. I don't want to teach this. But you're saying systemically, like new teachers aren't necessarily getting what they need. Like if you had to like say maybe the top 3 things or top 3 to 5 things that, like, if I'm a new teacher, I need to know this. Like if you had to like nail it down to like a few things, because you got that information, you were like, oh, this is what this is about, and this is how I do this, in an effective way. Like if you had to like nail it down for a new teacher, like 5 things to be, or 3 to 5 things to be set up when they enter the classroom, what would you say? Like, what would be your thoughts? Just curious.
Around like content knowledge,
whatever you would think, like this is, they would need to be trained on this and this. Like, what would you think? I know it's a lot of things, because Lord knows.
So definitely like how to teach kids how to read, right? And that I think should be K to 8, right? Because well, everyone is going to encounter a child that has either been failed by the school system, right? Or has another circumstance that makes it hard for them to learn to read. And so I do believe that K through 8, all of those teachers need to know how to teach kids how to read. I think the second piece is understanding and I think the Common Core and the new curriculum helps us get at this. I started teaching in 1999. But the idea of how to teach mathematics in a way that moves from the concrete to the abstract. Like I didn't learn that until I was probably in my fifth or sixth year of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had understood how manipulatives help kids understand how numbers work before you get to algorithms.
Yes. Come on.
Again, right, thinking about those first few years of teaching and what I didn't have access to, and so therefore I was not able to give my students access to.
Nope.
It infuriates me.
Yes.
And I think the third thing is probably something around like trauma-informed care.
Come on. Yes.
Because
Yes.
most of our children, and I taught in, all under resource schools, or all of our children do not need trauma-informed care, but some of them really do. And
Yes.
I feel like as teachers, before you but again, it goes back to this, like having this curiosity about children and families. I do think sometimes we think that the kids who are acting out or more difficult, they're just like the other kids. They're just badder, or they're just harder, or they're just less engaged. Like it's like they are, and so therefore they should be okay, and they should be able to pay attention, and they should, because, and right, it's kind of like, oh, I'm colorblind, I don't see color, right? It's just not true.
Yes.
And so we're looking at these kids and we're like, oh, my kids are kind of, on a scale of 1 to 10, my kids are like, a 5 or a 6. And then I've got this kid who's like at an 8, but I don't even acknowledge the 8. I'm just like, oh, no, you should be acting the same as these kids who are.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that.
You know what I mean? And it's treating our students who are outliers as if they're not outliers. And so if there's a child that's really struggling, I think we as teachers, we have to be equipped to know, again, how to approach that child with curiosity. I remember this quote that I heard a couple years ago, and it really has sat with me of, when you meet a child who is really struggling, instead of asking them, what is wrong with you? You must ask them, what happened to you? I just get chills even just thinking about that, right? Like, there's a reason. Behavior is a communication, and it's communicating something. There's a reason why people do what we do, right? There's a reason why adults do what we do.
Yes,
right?
Always.
So look at a child that is struggling to be self-aware, is struggling to, resolve conflicts, is struggling to mediate themselves in a class. Kids don't want to flip desks and throw chairs.
No.
Nobody wants to act out like that.
No.
That is not fun. It doesn't get them the attention that they want. They don't feel good about themselves. And Andrea, I did not know that for so long.
Oh, me either. Oh, me either.
Now it's like, of course.
Right.
But I didn't know how to approach that child any differently than I would a kid who was, acting up or having a rough day or whatever. Fortunately, my school had resources, counselors, social workers, etc. But had I known more, I could have done more to support that child in the classroom in a far more constructive way.
Agreed.
So anyway, sorry, I'm going on and on. But
that's good. That's good. Keep going.
Abstract and trauma-informed care.
Yes, which that last one I really want to. I think all three of those important. Like I never even thought about that. Like K-8, like everyone, we all gonna learn how to teach people to read.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that as a possibility, because I think often we kind of go to, like, I've definitely heard people be like, oh, well, they just can't do it. But if we have the tools, but normally, like, I don't know, this is just my thinking. I think that when we don't know, like, we got to blame something or someone or something, and we I don't have the tool. I need more information.
Yes.
So I never even thought about, like, from K-8, like how impactful that would be we all can teach people how to read, so that means I can support you if there is unfinished learning. Like, I can support you with that because I have the tools to do so. And then the concrete to abstract, which I just even though I know math, I just learned about that last year, like how when we forget about that piece, when we just go straight to numbers and the algorithm, like, and I was like, oh, that's what they mean by that. Like,
Yes, isn't
seeing
it?
that visually, yes, because like I
Yeah.
had to learn K-12 and I was like, oh, this is why when they say carry 1, they actually, we taking a 10, we unbundling that thing, and then we're gonna, like I was like, oh, that makes sense now. Like I get that.
Yes, right. And think about the
Mhm.
number of kids who just thought they were dumb and couldn't get it. And right,
Mhm.
it's like, no, it's because if your teachers weren't taught that way, of course you're not going to know that.
Yes, right,
And we better let teachers know that it's okay, right?
right, right,
You know
right.
better, you do better, but we've got to make sure that our teachers are knowing better.
Yes, yes. Because I was definitely that teacher. Like I was like, you need to do it my way. But
Yeah.
it's like, how do I know that my way is the most accurate way? Like, if the sky is green, you can prove it. Hey, maybe it works too. But that last one that you named, the trauma informed practice, man, that to me is just so deep.
Mm.
Because when I hear you say that, what I hear is like, I think sometimes as a teacher, I don't know about you, but I'm like, man, I'm over here I'm using the wrong tool to address a situation. Like, I'm not even looking at the backstory behind it. I'm not saying like, actually, what's going on? Because you know you're not engaged, like what is actually going on. But I hear, from what I heard you say, which I really love that perspective, is like, we're trying to make everyone kind of the same, like, oh, everyone needs to be at a 5, everyone needs to be the same. But it's like, we're adults and we're so diverse. Will we not expect children to be diverse too? Why are we expecting them to be able to just sit and be quiet and listen to us? Hell, we can't even do it.
Yes.
We're just diverse, and it's just who we are, and just like, what's the story behind that? I love that. I really, that piece in particular is so so important. That those trauma informed practices, and I'm even thinking, like, as teachers, like that's training we have to have for ourselves too, like our own traumas and things like that, so that we can be compassionate to our kids. So
Right, right,
mhm.
right. It's we get triggered,
Yes,
right? And
absolutely.
and and it's okay to say that we're triggered by other adults, but no
Mhm.
one would want to say they get triggered by children, right? Because we're supposed to be like bigger than that.
Mhm.
And our own, I'm so glad you brought that up, our own owned trauma, right?
Mhm.
Or habits or what
Mhm.
have you, are so deeply ingrained, like you will get triggered by your students,
Oh yes.
right? And if you don't recognize it, then you're going to react in a way that does not help that kid out, and frankly doesn't help you out either.
Oh
You
yes.
know? Oh my gosh, and I did that so much.
Oh yes. Screaming at children as your reaction is not the best way. And I'm not judging, guys. I did it.
Right,
I
right.
did it. I screamed at the top of my lungs and they did not care. They did not respond. Let me tell you that this is what not to do. Don't scream at them. They're just going to look at you and say, oh, she can't manage herself. Up, we're going to keep
Mm.
going. We got to her. So that's what not to do. But yes, you're right. We're humans. We have triggers. Yes, kids will trigger you guys. They checked me for wearing the same pants every day. And they were right. Wore the same pants every day. They did. They called me out. But I mean, what can I say? Yeah, they were right. Okay, so we're wrapping up on time. I want to be mindful of your time, Mags. So, if you had to say, like, what is one key takeaway that you want to kind of for teachers to take away from our conversation today?
That teaching is a collective experience. That teaching is something that you do with children and families, not to them.
Come on now. So it's not the sage on the stage. All about me. No.
Right now, right? It's like it is not delivery, right? Like it is, um, it's dynamic, and
Mm,
teachers, we as teachers need to be open to when children and parents are teaching us stuff as well. Yeah, I feel like I certainly approached my first year that, teaching was something that I did to kids, right? I'm going to teach you these things, right? And you're
Yes,
going to
yes,
receive them, and you're going to thank me, and
yes.
your parents are going to love. I mean, it was about me.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and that's not it, right? This is a thing that we do with communities, not to them.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I really love that. Like collective, like I really like that, like the delivering to, you know, definitely have heard that before, but like saying it's more of like we're in this together, which I think is just so powerful. And almost to me, it's like it makes me think about the classroom too, like shifting the ownership to
Mhm.
students, versus like me just up there doing it. But like, yeah, it's like a collective, everybody. We all said parents, students, everybody, but we're working together to get this done.
Right. Yeah. Like it's our vision, right?
Mm,
It's not just Maggie Slye's vision, which is certainly how I approached my first year.
right, right.
Like my classroom's going to look like this because I believe in these things and the kids are
Mm-hmm.
going to respond in this way.
Right,
Instead, like being more expansive, like families, what is your vision for a classroom?
right.
Kids, what is your vision for a classroom? And then let's build something together.
Yes, love that, love that, love that. Last point. Now this one is not on here. This is just for my own curiosity. So obviously a lot of rookie teachers, like I told you, I'm in these new teacher groups, and they're like, man, Mags, I am crying every day of this virtual teaching. Like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? So if you had to give a new teacher like one piece of advice this year, because Lord knows the struggle bus is real this year, and not just for new teachers. I think hell for everybody. we
Yeah, yeah,
just we
yeah.
just trying to figure it out. So if you like had to give one piece of advice for a new teacher this year, because the struggle is real in these streets, what would you say? What would you tell them? Words of encouragement, anything, because we
Yeah.
just need it right now.
Yeah. So I'll say two things. I think one, like words of encouragement, like I think I think this group of teachers in this school year, 2021, will probably have one of the most difficult first years of teaching in generations.
Mm,
I mean, it's not one day, right? Like
mm-hmm,
my best friend was a first year teacher on 9/11, right? That is an incredible responsibility to be
mm-hmm.
with children on such a devastating day.
Wow.
Um, this year, depending on a family situation, can be the most devastating day for an entire year, right? We're
Mm,
dying, the economy's crumbling,
mm-hmm,
um, there is pervasive racial injustice that is just not being addressed through our
mm-hmm,
institutions.
mm-hmm,
Um, and so when I think about New Year's and then adding new teachers and then adding on
mm-hmm,
learning to do it all virtually, this is really a hard year. And so I would
mm-hmm,
just say that I have so much respect, um, and really honor people stepping into the classroom and being teachers, becoming new principals, all of these, choosing this path this year and
mm-hmm,
doing it anyway.
mm-hmm,
I just have so much respect and high regard for
mm-hmm,
people, because this is going to be very, very challenging. And as we've been talking about, you will get through this. Your students will get through it. We will get through it, and
mm-hmm,
we will get to the other side.
mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I just have a friend that you can call.
Yes, you heard her. Do not be out here trying to do it alone. You got to talk to somebody, guys. You have got to talk to somebody. And hey, I subscribe to therapy too. I keep a good therapist on my team, guys, regularly. This is emotion. I think this is a really emotionally charged year. I mean, it just is. I don't know any other way to say it, y'all. Like, it's real in these streets this year, you know. So just to add to what she said, just be really gentle and just gracious with yourself. Like, it's challenging. Have somebody you can talk to, you know, especially as new teachers. Like even you said before, you like, man, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard? Yeah, it's that hard, and you don't have to do it yourself. Like, it's a collective thing. Just to add to what she said there, like, we in this together. So, you know, even if just DM me if you need some help, something, please. Okay. All right. So, Mags, we are closing this thing out. And if people want to connect with you, Maggie, and they just want to say, hey, how are you? They want to reach out to you on social media or something like that. Where can they find? How you doing? What's going on? Who is that?
This is Francis.
Hey, Francis. How are you? He's so cute.
Yes, please do get in touch. You can find me on Facebook, Maggie Slye. You can find me on LinkedIn, Maggie Slye. And you can also find me on our website, leadingeducators.org, and get in touch with me in that way too.
Yes. Well, thank you again for your time. I really love the gems that you dropped today. You definitely dropped some gems and definitely brought some insight to me as well. So I'm so appreciative for your time and your thoughts and just your insight today. So thank you again. And yes, well, do you have any last words before we log off here?
I want to say thank you to you. Like, what an incredible service this is to first year teachers. Man, like, I feel like if you had existed in 1999, it's been a much better year for me and my kids.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You know, that first year is tough. So, you know, I just want to try to help others, you know, where I can, because we know that, like you said, teachers, we have such impact.
Yeah.
You know, and really just building the efficacy of kids is really what it's about to me, and hopefully teachers as well. So thank you for that. And for those of you that have not yet, I need you to go to mentalfitness.com/rookies. And I need you guys to cop that book, The Rookies Playbook, guys. The Rookies Playbook. But this is a sample. But The Rookies Playbook, yes, go get that. mentalfitness.com/rookies. But we will be back next week. Same time, 7 o'clock. And thank you again, Maggie, for your expertise and your greatness. Today, we'll be back again. Y'all have a great Sunday, and we will talk soon. Okay, stop live stream. And let me see.